What I tell people, you have a system already. I mean, when you wake up in the morning, and I usually, when I do lectures, I have them raise their hand and I go, okay, so how many of you actually make your coffee in the morning a different way every morning? You don't. You do the same thing. It's system, right? So you already have a system, but to your point, if you had it like documented and put in place, then you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, and you actually can save time and do more. As we were talking, I just looked up like the definition of system in a Merriam-Webster dictionary, and this is a good one. It says it's very simple. It's basically an organized or established procedure. That's a system. And and I like also to look where the word came from. I mean, if you look the etymology, the origin of that word, it actually comes from Greek, which comes from sin and histema, to cause to stand. So it's basically sin is together. So to cause to stand together. That's where the word came from. So system. So it's to stand together. So you have different actions that are standing together. So, and as you said, you use the word aligned. It's all aligned, right? They work together. So that's a system. It's basically an organized procedure.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here, and it is game day at the Play Your Position podcast, and I am so glad you have decided to join us because I have an amazing guest with us today. She is today's starting quarterback. Her name is Adi Klevit. Adi, are you ready for kickoff?
I am so excited to be here. Absolutely.
I am excited too. So team, here are some things I know about Adi. First of all, she is the founder of the Business Success Consulting Group, which is a team of experienced professionals working together to provide business owners, entrepreneurs, and key executives with strategic implementation, process improvement, and documentation, and long-lasting systems necessary to support business expansion. Adi specializes in helping businesses scale and also to grow by implementing efficient business infrastructure, processes, and systems. So that is her sweet spot. She's going to get into some stories, I think, today about how systems can be our friend. She works with companies that want to scale and expand, as well as companies that are gearing up for transition. She lives in the Portland, Oregon area. And Adi, I'm just so excited you're here today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So right out of the gate, Adi, you are today's starting quarterback. And my first question is always for you to share with us your story about when did you receive the call to leadership and do the work you're doing? In other words, play your position.
All right. Well, I've been doing it for over 25 years. My background is industrial engineering. And the reason why I decided to study industrial engineering is because it combines understanding of people with science. And that always intrigued me because I was very good at science, but I always liked people and wanted to help people. So if we're talking about the call, I think that started then, like helping people improve, bring order, organization to their lives. And that's how I started my career, and it evolved through working for different companies, for consulting companies, through starting my own company in 2011. So this is our 10th year in business, which is exciting.
Yes, congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, so it just, I continued along that line.
So you've been drawn to order and organization, it sounds like, most of your life. And when you look around at some of the challenges that we are facing today in business, in the world, what are some of the things that you could point to that are causing leaders to struggle? What keeps you up at night?
I don't think a lot of things keep me up at night, but it's really the ability to implement it across the organization, making sure that people are actually able to use it and coming up with ways on how to implement basically what we do how to make sure that it's actually being implemented and people are using it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for people listening today who may be part of an organization or perhaps like you and me are running their own show, what advice could you give about the implementation process? Say a company is looking at bringing in a new system, and since that's something that you specialize in, could you take us inside just a little bit of your process for helping a company? Or I know you work with companies and not so much individuals, so we'll just go with what you do. What is your assessment process like? What are you looking for to know, aha, this is what we need to do?
So what I do is I assess the entire organization, and I basically identify the areas that we need to bring order to, meaning areas that need the majority of the organization, that if they had well-documented processes and procedures, will create the biggest, that particular aspect, if we had those systems in place, will bring the biggest return on investment. And that's really what we are looking for. And if you manage to identify that area, then it's definitely easier to bring that order, that organization, and then also have the follow-through, right? So it's a matter of really identifying the right area and get everybody involved. I know we're talking about leadership. So as a leader, you're not supposed to do everything yourself. You definitely utilize your team. You utilize the team members that you have, and you utilize their strengths in order to create those systems, and then you will get the buy-in. But it's a continual process. So it has to be led correctly. It has to be coached, etc.
Right. So what is an example of a system of documentation that a company might consider putting into play?
It can be all over the organization. It can be HR systems. It can be sales. It can be marketing. It can be the operations. It can be business development. I mean, we've done it all over basically documenting the entire systems across the organization. So it's really a matter of where would you like to start? What area has the biggest disorganization that you want to bring order to?
Okay. So when I think about documentation, are you literally sitting down with the team or the individual leader and saying, step 1, we do this. Step 2, then we do this. Is it that granular?
Absolutely. Yeah. It can be. I mean, the first thing that we do is basically we will map the entire process from beginning to end. And then we will identify the different procedures that exist. And then we will start a documentation. So it's interviewing, it's asking questions, it's looking at things, and then creating those process manuals that then can be used in order to train employees for business continuity, for consistency, etc.
So why do you think so many businesses struggle with this part? I mean, obviously you've been in business for 10 years. You're very successful. You have lots of clients. You have great case studies. But why is it, Adi, that the systems and documentation is the piece that so many businesses either don't realize they need or they ignore?
It's interesting. There are different reasons. I mean, some people are not good at it. That's not their strength. They maybe want to consider more creativity, or not that writing procedures is not creative. But, if let's say I work with marketing agencies, so they want to concentrate on creating on the next client, the next project, and they not necessarily take the time to sit down and do it. But also it's a know-how of where to start, how to do it. I make it very simple for people. I have this ability to go into an organization and figure out, okay, those are the procedures, those are the processes, this is how we bring order, those are the systems. And not a lot of people have that, so that's, I guess, a reason is the know-how. And with the know-how also comes the time. So it's basically saying, well, I have to concentrate on production. I can't really stop right now and concentrate on documenting. So that's where bringing somebody external can definitely help with it.
That makes sense, because if you're so involved in the day-to-day operations of your business and, like you said, producing whatever it is your company makes or the services that you provide, it is a matter of bandwidth. You just don't have the energy or the time left over after all of that to sit back and say, okay, what do we do? So that's the value that you bring and it sounds like I would call you a systems whisperer, that you could walk in and almost see immediately, I know what's going on here.
That's right. I like it. Can I use that? I'm gonna adopt that term. I actually like it a lot.
You can, absolutely. It's all fair game. So I would love for you to tell us a story about a time, Adi, when you found yourself playing out of position, when things did not go according to your game plan. And working with the football metaphor, you were metaphorically sacked, intercepted, or you fumbled the ball. What happened, and then how did you recover from it?
I like the metaphor. That's good. So I'm trying to think about an example, a specific example, but it happens. We start a project and we started a project and then the lead person that was helping us basically quit. So it was interesting because we still needed to finish the project, but we are doing knowledge transfer. We're basically getting the knowledge from somebody and that person basically left. So we don't have the knowledge and we still need to provide it somehow. So we managed to do it with we found other resources in the company. We figured it out and it took us a little bit longer, but we created a great manual. And I think it's also emphasized the need to do that because nobody expected that sudden interruption in the middle.
Knowledge transfer is an interesting term. And I'm imagining that with the number of baby boomers who are now leaving the workforce, I imagine that you see that in the work that you do. What would you want to tell companies who may have a workforce that is made up of, say, a certain percentage of baby boomers? What are some things that companies should be preparing for?
They really need to have their processes and procedures documented. And that knowledge that is going to go away with retirement, it has to be documented. And we can't wait for 9 months, 6 months before retirement. It has to be done way in advance so people can be trained and that very valuable knowledge is not going to go away. So I would recommend using different types of documentation, whether it's videos, creating what we call a university, like a learning management system. So I've done several of those and really capturing that knowledge, but capturing the key components, not just the procedures, the technical procedures on how to do something. And I think that's to your earlier question. A lot of people think, so if somebody quits, I can have them learn the software. But there is so much more behind that, which is the why. Why are they doing it a certain way? What are the best advices? What are the things that they learned? We're talking about the people that are going to retire or move on. What did they learn throughout their experience? What works, what doesn't work? So it's really an art by itself to take that knowledge in a way that can be usable and we don't lose all the successful actions.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
When you are working with people like that who have a lot of knowledge, have a lot of experience, the art side of things, what roadblocks come up sometimes? Do you ever encounter people who are reluctant to share what they know? Or do you ever come across companies who say, hey, we're so much more advanced now that the knowledge that so-and-so has is really no longer relevant? And how do you deal with that? Because I'm thinking of, say somebody has worked with a company for 20, 30 years and has seen a company go through those decades of growth and transition and all that. And there is value there, but because people are saying, well, we're in 2021 now, and what you knew in 1993 doesn't matter anymore. I'm curious, how do you address those kinds of challenges if they come up?
Right. So first of all, whenever we're doing a project, we have to identify the reason why we are doing the project. Because obviously, when we are being hired for a specific project, somebody made a decision that that project is important. And before they made a decision, there is a why behind it. Like, what are they trying to accomplish? Why are we documenting it? Are we documenting it in order to write a history book of the company, or we document, which never happens, right? But are we documenting it for future use, right? So we are going to always concentrate on what's working right now with an eye on the future, right? So, so we're not going to go back to what happened in 1993. We're going to look at present time right now and what is being taken into the future. And we also assess what's successful. what is successful, what is not successful, what led to the success up to now, right? So those are the things we concentrate on, and that's where we basically find the important data as opposed to document everything. So we really concentrate on the data or the information that will align with why we're doing that project. And in terms of the beginning of the question, if we run into people that don't want to cooperate or don't want to share their knowledge, it happens, but it's, again, we always start every project by getting a buy-in. Like, why would it benefit that person to actually do this project, right? The only time that I really find that people are more reluctant is when they have some fear or some apprehension that they're going to lose their position. So when that happens, then we have to deal with the leadership team, et cetera, and really see maybe there is deeper things that are going on in that organization. However, usually people are more than happy to document once, again, they get the reassurance that it's not, their job is not in jeopardy. It's just really continuing their legacy or to accomplish whatever needs to be accomplished by that project.
That makes sense. Now, you brought up something interesting. You talked about when you go in and work on a project, you're focusing on what's happening today and looking at the future. My next question has to do with the future. And we all know that the world is constantly changing. When you look into your crystal ball, Adi, what do you predict will have the greatest impact on how we show up to work in life over the next 5 years?
Oh my gosh. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I had, like at the beginning of 2020, I would have predicted this whole thing. I would have predicted it, right? So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there is going to be more online because for me anyway, I see the convenience there is a lot of convenience in it for my type of business. There are businesses that cannot do it. So I think there will be a shift in the workforce in terms of working more from home, more flexibility in terms of working from home or working from the office, a lot of online. I don't know what will happen. I don't know what will happen in terms of the big expos, the business travel, etc. I think it will happen again because people enjoy that. That's the best way to do business. We like to interact. We like to, we're social beings. We like to interact with each other. There is no, in my opinion, no substitute to personal interaction, right? Even when we had the restaurants open in the summer, I guess they're open now, but you can only sit outside. But, when we actually were able to go to a restaurant and I had some lunch meetings, it was great to actually sit in front of somebody and actually see their body language, talk to them. It's so different than just a flat screen, just like seeing somebody flatly on Zoom in 2 dimensions. So I think that will probably be a mixture, but I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't. So I think my advice on that is just like take each moment as it is and figure out how to go from there.
I love it. And as far as systems go, what is one of the more popular systems that you work with companies to implement? I'm talking about is there a certain software system? The word systems is a broad term. So I immediately think of... It is a broad term. Yeah. I immediately think of some kind of, again, a software system that allows people to log in and connect, like Zoom, right? Zoom is a system. It allows us to communicate with each other through either audio or video or both.
Yeah, absolutely. Zoom is a system. And when I say systems, it's more like the definition of a system is like a method or a way of doing something. So we systematize in terms of documenting the processes and procedures, right?
Got it.
We will also can recommend systems like, let's say a CRM is a system as well, right? A QuickBooks, or Sage or whatever you're using, like in terms of a financial system. But we are not implementers of software systems, but we systematize in terms of the repetition, in terms of finding the common denominator of the actions that are being done in order to create customized processes and procedures that will create consistency in the organization.
Beautiful. That was exactly what I was hoping you'd say. That definition is so clear. And for people who are more creative and like the artistic side of business, meaning they like to create the social media posts or they like to write the blogs or whatever it may be, what you do is the less sexy part of having a business, but it's so important because if you don't have those repetitious kinds of procedures that you can count on, you're going to be, like you said at the beginning, disorganized, all over the place. You're going to have trouble closing sales because you're not aligned. You don't have a way of repeating and saying, this works. Just do this and this will work. And it takes a while sometimes for a company to figure that out. But again, that's where your value comes in, because you can see almost immediately, this is what you need to do, get them on track, and then they're on their way in a positive direction.
You're absolutely right. And that's actually, you brought a great point in terms of the creative, and I touched on it a little bit before. Sometimes when somebody's creative, they think, oh, I don't need a system because it will ruin my creativity. But it's the opposite. Because the creativity will just, you probably know when you coach people about writing their books, right? And you need a system, right? Mm-hmm. Because otherwise it's not going to happen. You have to have a system. And, you wake up in the morning, you sit down in front of the computer, you have your topics. I just can imagine that this is a system. And then what happens in between those steps, that's where the creativity and the overall individual activities happen.
It's so true. And I think the part that people struggle with, I'm speaking for myself in a different time in my life, is because I am creative and I like what's new, having to do something over and over and over again is boring. And yet it is such an essential piece of the success puzzle. So I'm so glad that you defined it the way you did, because people listening who may be struggling with systematizing their business or even their life. I mean, even just regular life needs a system. You have a routine, you wake up, you have a morning routine, you have your breakfast, you have a fitness system or a relationship system. I mean, everything can be systematized. So I find that fascinating.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell people, you have a system already. I mean, when you wake up in the morning, and I usually when I do lectures, I have them raise their hand and I go, okay, so how many of you actually make your coffee in the morning a different way every morning? You don't. You do the same thing. It's system, right? So you already have a system. But to your point, if you had it like documented and put in place, then you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, and you actually can save time and do more. As we were talking, I just looked up like the definition of system in a Merriam-Webster dictionary, and this is a good one. It says it's very simple. It's basically an organized or established procedure. That's a system.
Yeah.
And, and I like also to look where the word came from. I mean, if you look the etymology, the origin of that word, it actually comes from Greek, which comes from sin and histema, to cause to stand. So it's basically sin is together. So to cause to stand together. That's where the word came from. So system, so it's to stand together. So you have different actions that are standing together. And as you said, you use the word aligned. It's all aligned, right? They work together. So that's a system. It's basically an organized procedure.
Right. I love it. Well, we're at the part of the show, Adia, called Touchdown. And if you want to talk about a system, that is the ultimate goal for any football team, is to get as many touchdowns as possible. And their game plays are designed to get them there. So I'm going to put you in the red zone, metaphorically speaking, of course. There are less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You are down by 4 points. It's third down, and it is now or never. Tell us a story about a time when you ran the metaphorical ball into the end zone for that game-winning touchdown.
All right. So, when I do projects, I always set up a timeline, and I just like to, not just like, I go for making it, like making the due date. And, so let's take a project, we just completed one, and we realized that there was another area that we didn't even address. We missed it somehow, or with talking to the client, we didn't even address that. And after we put so much organization in other areas, they go, but this area is so much crucial. It's very crucial. We have to get it done. I go like, okay, we're going to get it done on time. So then I got another 2 consultants that we work together and pull them into this project and go, okay, we are going to go do interviews. We're going to take a look at what is being done. We're going to put all of our forces together, and boom, we got it done on time. So, and deployed, and basically got the entire team trained on it. And that was a big win. Everybody was really, really happy. And it was a little bit stressful behind the scenes, but we got it done. And that was awesome.
I love it. I love it. Any project that's done on time and deployed well is a win.
I know, right? We can't just say, oh, well, sorry, I need another 2 weeks. No, we're just going to get it done.
I love it. I love it. Well, as we come to the end of our conversation today, Dee, which has been so much fun, I like to ask 1 to 3 key offensive strategies straight out of your leadership playbook that you could share with listeners that would give them a way to make some forward progress in their work and life right now. What could you recommend?
I would recommend to make the decision to make time to do this, to organize. Make time to systematize, decide where you're going to start, and start somewhere, because those are the little steps that count. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. You have to start somewhere. If you feel like you're overwhelmed or you don't know where to start or it's too much and what are we going to do? How are we going to take the first step? Or you don't know what to do, just start, decide you're going to start and take a look and break it down. Just like the question I started at the beginning is like, what area of your company do you need to bring order to? What's the answer to that? Then tackle that area. In that area, what is the most burning thing that if you had it well organized, it will change your life, or it will make your life easier. It will make it better. And start tackling that area and just start it like that, step by step by step.
I love it. And of course, I'm thinking about my garage.
Okay.
And attacking the garage, right? I mean, it certainly works in business as well, of course. That's great.
Like, let's talk about the garage. So now they tackle it not just in your head. You actually have to take a piece of paper or open a Word document, whatever you're doing, and what steps are you going to take? And then hold yourself accountable or found an accountability partner. I'll be happy to hold you accountable to do the first step. What is the first step? Is it removing that box that has been sitting there for the last, I don't know how many years? Yeah, I'm guilty of it as well. So maybe, it's like, what is the first step to take in order to actually get to the final result? It's the first step. And then reward yourself. Celebrate the wins. Let's say you took the first step. Okay, what's the reward for that? And then continue to the second one, the third one, the fourth one, etc.
Yes. Oh, it's great. It's great. Well, for people who would like to connect with you, Adi, where can they find you online?
So they can find me, they can email me. So my email is Adi, which is ADI, at Biz Success CG. So it's BIZ Success CG for consulting group. So bizsuccesscg.com. And my website is also bizsuccesscg.com. Or you can call me at 503-662-2911.
Excellent. And of course, team, you know that the links to connect with Adi will be on her show notes page over at pyppodcast.com. And if you or someone you know is needing help with systematizing your business is in transition, and you're looking to scale, I would not hesitate to call her and her team. The work she does is phenomenal. And before we say goodbye, Adi, would you please be so kind to share with us a favorite book or a book you're reading now that you think is worth a look?
I was actually sharing it yesterday with somebody that he was reading the same book. It's The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. I love that book because it pushes you to think big. It pushes you to take massive action. And it really talks about how success is your duty and responsibility. And I really like that concept.
I love that. I'm going to make a note to put a link to that book as well on your show notes page, because leaders read and get ideas from as many sources as possible. And you are a wealth of information today, Adi, that's useful and practical. And it gives us all food for thought. And for that, I want to thank you so much for your time today here at PYP. It's been a blast.
Thank you, Marilyn. I really appreciate you having me on your podcast. This has been really fun.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Got a great key offensive strategy you like to share? Write to us at coach@pyppodcast.com or on Twitter, use hashtag PYP and let us know how you're running your ball into the end zone for those game-winning touchdowns.